Hello students, today we are here again to solve the exercises of Science and Technology Standard 9. Today we are going to solve the exercise of lesson number 7, that is energy flow in an ecosystem. So we will solve this exercise of lesson number 7. This is your exercise and this lesson comes under Science Part 2. Before we proceed, please like, subscribe and press the bell icon. So let us start with the question number 1. Question number 1 is complete the following table. Here you have to fill or write the answers in two columns of biotic and abiotic processes. So biotic processes are the processes in which living entities are involved, for example plants, organisms, etc. And abiotic processes in which the nutrients or the chemicals are produced. So now we'll start. Carbon cycle. The biotic process includes over here is the release of oxygen and carbon dioxide through respiration or photosynthesis. So that is the biotic process. And abiotic process is the release of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by burning of fossil fuels, woods, etc. Second one is oxygen cycle. So oxygen, release of oxygen through respiration process. In this process the biotic entities are involved. So that is the biotic process. And abiotic process is photo dissociation of water vapor in upper atmosphere, as a result of which oxygen is released when water molecules are split by light. Then the next is nitrogen cycle. So again in the nitrogen cycle, in various steps some organisms or microbes are involved. So those includes in under the biotic processes. What are those steps? Nitrogen fixation step. Here the nitrosomonas bacteria are involved. So nitrification, ammonification, these are the biotic processes. And abiotic processes are the nitrogen fixation in atmosphere and denitrification. So these are the answers of the question number 1. Please note this down in your notebook. Second question is, correct and rewrite the following statement and justify your correction. So here one statement is given to you. You have to write the correct statement, then you have to justify your correct statement. So first statement is, carnivores occupy the second trophic level in the food chain, which is the wrong statement, right? So now we have to correct it. The answer is, carnivores occupy the third trophic level in the food chain. Now why? Because the second level is occupied by the herbivores. Herbivores are the organisms which feed on the plant. So plant at the first level, herbivores are at the second level, and at the third level carnivores are there which will feed on the herbivores. So this is your explanation which you will write along with your correct statement. The second statement is, the flow of nutrients in an ecosystem is considered to be a one-way transport. The answer is, obviously we have to write the correct statement here. So the answer or the correct statement is, the flow of nutrients in an ecosystem occurs in a cyclic manner. You can write the justification which I have given over here. You know that suppose if you take the example of any nutrient like oxygen. So this oxygen is present in the atmosphere. This oxygen is taken up by the humans. Then humans will perform the respiration and in return they will given out the carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is absorbed by the plants and in return plants again release the oxygen in the environment. So the oxygen starts from the atmosphere and again that nutrient goes and present in the atmosphere only. So in this way the cyclically the flow is observed. So the flow of nutrients in an ecosystem occurs in a cyclic manner. The third question is, plants in an ecosystem are called primary consumers. So correct statement is, plants in an ecosystem are called primary producers, not consumers. The justification is plants are autotrophs, so they can produce their own food, and other organisms are dependent on them to meet their nutritional requirements. So they are the primary producers. Now, the next question number 3 is give reasons. First give reason they asked you is energy flow through an ecosystem is one way. The answer of this is first, the producers convert solar energy into chemical energy in the form of organic compounds. So, whatever the energy or the food that is produced by the plants, it is consumed by the herbivores. So, the primary consumers, which are herbivores, derive their nutrition from the producer. So, according to the energy transfer law, only 10% of the energy is transferred from one trophic level to the other. So, the energy that is captured by the producer does not revert back to the sun, and the energy transferred to the herbivores does not come back again to the producers. So it just keeps on moving to the next trophic level in an unidirectional way, and that is why the flow of energy in the food chain is unidirectional, or we can say it is one way. Second question of give reason is equilibrium is necessary in the various biogeochemical cycle. What is equilibrium? Equilibrium is the balance. So that balance is important. Why it is important? Because the cyclic flow of nutrients within an ecosystem is called as biogeochemical cycles. A continuous transfer of nutrients which are necessary for the growth of organisms occurs from abiotic to biotic factor, and then again from biotic to the abiotic factor. So this nutrient cycle operates continuously through the biosphere formed by lithosphere, atmosphere and hydrosphere. So the recycling of these biogeochemicals depend upon the energy transfer in an ecosystem. So if any disturbance occur in this energy transfer, there will be the complete imbalance of this biogeochemical cycles, and that is why it is very important to maintain the equilibrium of various biogeochemical cycles. Students, if you want, you can pause the video and you can write the answers. The next question is flow of nutrients through an ecosystem is cyclic. As I told you, like any nutrient if you take, that will return to its original source in a cyclical manner. So why it is so, that we have to write. So the flow of nutrients through an ecosystem is cyclic as the nutrients move from one trophic level to the another trophic level, all way up and then back down. So the cyclic flow of nutrients occurs in the following manner. First point is producers. So producers are green plants. They prepare their own food. They are at the lowest trophic level. They take the energy from the sun, and by the help of photosynthesis they will produce their own food or the energy. Then these nutrients, second point is these nutrients manufactured by the producers are passed to the primary consumers or herbivores. Then secondary consumers like carnivores feed on the herbivores, so that energy or that nutrients get transferred from the herbivores to the carnivores. Then after some time these carnivores become dead, and then tertiary or the quaternary consumers comes into the role. They decay the dead and decaying matter, they just decompose that, and again the nutrients come back into the nature. So in this way the energy or the nutrient that is produced in the first trophic level, that will obtained again at the last trophic level, and hence the flow of nutrient through an ecosystem is cyclic. The next question is, which is question number 4. Explain the following cycle in your own words with suitable diagram. first cycle that you have to explain is the carbon cycle. So whenever you are writing the answers, you have to draw the diagram. So you can see the carbon cycle over here. This diagram you have to draw in your notebook. It is given in your textbook even. So then we will explain the carbon cycle. So first point of the carbon cycle is carbon enters life forms through the process of photosynthesis. Because in photosynthesis, plants takes the carbon dioxide inside and they prepare their own food. So the first entry of the carbon is through the photosynthesis. So in this way, after photosynthesis, the glucose molecules can be produced. Second point of the answer is glucose, which is a source of food, is utilized by organisms to produce energy during the respiration. So during this process, again glucose is broken down in presence or absence of oxygen to produce the carbon dioxide. So another process that releases carbon dioxide is the combustion or burning. So many substances release carbon dioxide on burning. Vehicular emissions, industrial fumes, gases released during the process of cooking are some instances of release of carbon dioxide through combustion. So in this way, the carbon is cycled and repeatedly through different forms by the various physical and biological activities. It again complete its cycle. So this is the carbon cycle. Now second cycle that is asked over here is nitrogen cycle. So again you have to draw this diagram of nitrogen cycle. This diagram is also given in your textbook. If you want, you can copy down from here also. So we will now explain the nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen cycle basically takes place in certain steps. So the first step of nitrogen cycle is nitrogen fixation. So in this step, the nitrogen is present on the earth. The most of the part, that is 75% or 71% nitrogen is there on the earth. But that nitrogen is present in the atmosphere. So this atmospheric nitrogen has to be converted into the water soluble nitrates, and that occurs during the nitrogen fixation process. And this step is performed by the organisms like rhizobium, azotobacter and blue-green algae. So N2 is the formula of nitrogen, get converted into NO3 minus nitrate or NH4, which is ammonia form. Second step is nitrification. So nitrification is the process in which ammonia is first converted into the nitrites and then into the nitrates. So ammonia get converted into the nitrites and then it get converted into the nitrates with the help of bacteria Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter. We have written over here NH3 is the formula of ammonia. Ammonia get converted into the nitrite NO2 minus, then it converted into the nitrate, which is NO3 minus. So now third step is assimilation. In this step, NH3 and NO3 are incorporated into the biological tissues. For example, plants, they can take this nitrogen into their body, that is in biological tissue, that is assimilation. The next is ammonification. It is the process in which complex dead organic matter is decomposed into ammonia. This step is performed by organisms like decay bacteria and fungi. So the organic nitrogen compounds will again reduced into the ammonia. For example, the plants who have taken the nitrogen in assimilation process, they whenever they become dead, again the decomposition occur and the ammonia is released. So that is ammonification process. The fifth step is denitrification. So denitrification is the process where the nitrates present in the soil are reduced to release the nitrogen back into the atmosphere. As I told you, during the ammonification process, the organisms in the soil, the decomposition occurs and that organisms get that nitrogen, and in denitrification again those organisms release the nitrogen into the atmosphere, that is NO3 minus gives N2. So if you observe, the cycle starts from N2 and ends in N2. So this is the nitrogen cycle. The next cycle is oxygen cycle. So students, again you have to draw the diagram of oxygen cycle which is given in your textbook. So now we will explain the oxygen cycle. So oxygen is an important component of life. You all know that we require oxygen and we cannot even survive without oxygen. It comprises about the 21% of the atmospheric air, and it is present in dissolved form in water bodies and helps in the survival of aquatic life. In combined form, it is found both in earth crust and in the air. So, in the air, it occurs as a carbon dioxide. In the crust, it is present as oxides of metals, silicons, carbonates, sulfates, nitrates, and other minerals. So, oxygen is also a part of several essential biomolecules such as carbohydrates. Now, this oxygen cycle actually occurs like oxygen is utilized during respiration, combustion, and formation of oxides of nitrogen, and oxygen is returned to the atmosphere in only one major way, that is photosynthesis. So basically, oxygen is returned during only one way, which is photosynthesis. If you observe this diagram, you will understand that the plants are present, that plants releases the atmospheric oxygen. This atmospheric oxygen is taken by the animals, and those animals through the respiration they gives out, expels out CO2 and water. This water is given to the plants, and again the plants will release the oxygen in atmosphere. So the only source which releases the oxygen is the plant. So that is why students, it is very important to take care of the plants or the greenery present on the earth. So in this way the oxygen cycle completes. Now next is, what would you do to help maintain the equilibrium in the various biogeochemical cycles? Explain in brief. So how will you maintain the equilibrium? That is basically the question asked over here. So to maintain these biogeochemical cycles, we have to take certain steps. The first step for that is reduce the deforestation. As I told you, the oxygen is only obtained through the plants. So we have to reduce the deforestation to maintain the oxygen cycle. Second is reduce the carbon imprints. Third is minimize the use of fossil fuels and encourage the use of renewable energy sources. What are renewable energy sources? Solar energy is the renewable energy source, wind energy, tidal energy. So we have to use such renewable sources rather than using the fossil fuels, because the stock of the fossil fuel is limited. So we have to take care of that. We have to conserve the water because the fresh water is present in very small amount on the earth. Then we have to conserve the biodiversity, as both plants and animals are the parts of these biogeochemical cycles. As we see that in every cycle there was involvement of the animals, there was involvement of the plants, involvements of the bacteria. So all these, they are very important for these biogeochemical cycles, and we have to maintain their varieties, we have to maintain their biodiversities. Then only the equilibrium of the biogeochemical cycles can be achieved. The next is explain in detail the interrelationship between the food chain and food web. So we will write the answer now. The answer is, the energy flow among the various constituents of animals is known as food chain, and the length of food chain depends on the number of organisms. A food chain represents relationship between organisms only. For example, if you take the example over here, sun is the source. So from that sun, the plants will produce their own food. Then that food is used by the primary consumers, which is nil. Then that is consumed by the secondary consumer, for example small fishes. Then that small fishes are consumed by the tertiary consumers, for example large fishes. Then the humans capture those fishes, and in this way this food chain occurs. So food chain is the relationship between the organisms. There are so many organisms you can see in the food chain. But food web or food cycle is the connection between the different food chains. So food web is a broader concept than the food chain. So food web or a food cycle is the connection between the different food chains and represents what species eats what in an ecological system. A food web starts with the producers in ecosystem and then branches off into interconnected food chains that show who eats whom in an ecosystem. So suppose if you observe at this ecosystem, you can see that the producers plants are eaten by the squirrel, then squirrel is eaten by the wolves. But this wolves are the ultimate source, but these wolves cannot only eat the squirrel, they can eat the rabbit also, they can eat the mongoose also, which is eating the snake. So in this way the two food chains are interrelated over here. So in this way food web or a food cycle is the connection between different food chains, and that is what the difference between the food chain and the food web. The next question is state the various biogeochemical cycle and write their importance. So first we will write the types of biogeochemical cycles. So there are two types basically. Gaseous cycle. Gaseous cycle is the cycle in which the gases are involved. For example, carbon, which is a gas, nitrogen, which is a gas. Then sedimentary cycle. Sedimentary cycles are the biogeochemical cycles in which the reservoir pool is generally lithosphere. For example, phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle, etc. So these are the two main types of biogeochemical cycle. Now we have to explain the importance of each and every biogeochemical cycle. So we'll first consider the nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen cycle, you know that in the atmosphere 78% nitrogen is there. So nitrogen is very important for our life forms. Now where this nitrogen is included? So it is the structural component of our genetic material. What is a genetic material? DNA, RNA, vitamins. Okay, so DNA and RNA are made up of nitrogens, and the vitamins which will develop our immune system, that is also required nitrogen. So this is the importance of the nitrogen cycle. The next is oxygen cycle. The importance of oxygen cycle is unbeatable. You all know that without oxygen we cannot survive. So 21% of the atmospheric air is there. So we require the oxygen in the various forms, and we cannot even live without oxygen. So this is the importance of oxygen cycle. You can note this down, importance, in your notebook. The next is carbon cycle. So all organic substances are made up of carbons. So fats, vitamins, nucleic acid, carbohydrates, proteins, all they contain carbon as a structural component, and that is why this carbon is important for the endoskeleton, exoskeleton, everywhere the carbon is there. We are made up of carbon only. So that in this way the carbon cycle is also very important for us. The next question is explain the following with suitable examples. First question is what type of changes occur in the amount of energy during its transfer from plants to apex consumers? So the answer of this question is the amount of energy reduces as we move from lower trophic level to the higher ones, because we know and we have observed that only 10% of the energy is transferred to the next level. So energy is lost as it's get transferred from one organism to another, because energy is lost as a metabolic heat when the organism of one trophic level consumes the organism of another trophic level. This can also be explained on the basis of 10% rule, which states that when energy is passed in an ecosystem from one trophic level to the next, only 10% of the energy will be passed on to the next trophic level. This can be explained with the help of this energy pyramid. So here you can see at the producer level there is 10,000 joules of energy. Then at the primary consumer level only 1000 joule is transferred. At the secondary consumer only 100 joule is transformed, and at the tertiary consumers only 10 joules energy is transferred. So in this way we can see that as we move from lower trophic level to the higher trophic level, there is decrease in the amount of energy which is transferred. The next question is, what are the differences between the flow of matter and of energy in an ecosystem, and why? The answer is, the major differences between the flow of matter and the energy is that the flow of matter occurs in a cyclic manner. We know that carbon cycle, oxygen cycle. So the flow of these nutrients will be in a cyclic manner. That is, it is recycled. However, the flow of energy in an ecosystem is unidirectional, which means it is not recycled. The flow of matter follows the following path. Decomposers release nutrients when they break down dead organisms. Then the nutrients are taken up by the plants through their roots. Then the nutrients pass to primary consumers when they eat the plants. The nutrients pass to higher level consumers when they eat lower level consumers. When living things die, the cycle repeats. But in case of flow of energy, the energy flow through an ecosystem is one direction. That means from photosynthetic organisms to herbivores to omnivores and then to carnivores and then decomposers. Less and less energy becomes available to support life, and this loss of usable energy occurs because each energy transfer results in the dissipation of some energy into the environment in the form of heat. So this is the basic difference between the flow of matter and the energy flow. So students, we have covered the exercise of lesson number 7. Thank you very much for watching the video.